Are we still waiting for people to come? There's a... no, sorry, it's not. Okay, good evening, everyone. I think we have... Roberta, are there more to come outside or...? Okay, thank you. All right, well, welcome everybody to tonight's council meeting. I hope those of you that need chairs have been able to find one. We've put as many extras as we can. I think, Roberta, are you pointing to another chair? There's another chair there if somebody would like a seat. And apologies for not having as many as we would like to have in the chamber. I'd like to just welcome you all to the meeting and remind you that it is being live streamed and recorded, and that the voices and images of those participating in the meeting and in the gallery may be captured. So if you do come up to the microphone, you can be seen on the live stream. The rest of you can't be, you're sort of behind the camera. So usually the people that come and speak can be seen. I'd like to acknowledge the original custodians of the land we're meeting on tonight, pay respects to their elders past and present, and to any descendants who are here tonight. As councillors, we have all taken an oath to carry out our duties in the best interests of the people of Indigo Shire and to do this in a fair and impartial manner. We are all committed to exercising the council's powers and functions to the best of our skills and judgment. Before we start, I'd like to welcome our new CEO, Trevor Areno. So welcome, Trevor. This is his first council meeting. And I would say it is an unusually large gallery for Trevor. We don't usually get this many, so it's a good time to start. I'd like to welcome the members of the gallery. Thank you for coming. We realise there's some very topics of great interest to the community, so it's great to see such a good turnout, and hopefully we can actually clarify some of the issues tonight. And I'd also like to just... I'll get to you, Angela, in a moment. So are there any apologies or leave of absence? Any declarations of conflict of interest? Okay, so before we start, I'd like to suspend the standing orders to acknowledge the Australia Day recipients of the Medal of the Order of Australia and new member of the Order of Australia. So do I have a councillor to move that motion?
I'll move that motion, Madam Mayor.
Okay, so the motion is that standing orders be suspended to enable the acknowledgement of Australia Day recipients of the Medal of the Order of Australia, the Honourable Colin Campbell, OAM, and the Honourable Francis Walsh, OAM, and the new member of the Order of Australia, the Honourable Bill Baxter, AM. So you move that. Do I have a seconder for that?
I'm happy to second that, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, councillor. I'll just note that the Honourable Francis Walsh is unfortunately able to attend tonight due to a previous engagement that couldn't be broken. So I'd like to invite both Colin Campbell and Bill Baxter to speak briefly tonight. But before we start, I think Councillor Gaffney, you want to say a few words?
I'd just like to say that I certainly know Bill well and Colin well. They are two of the finest persons in Indigo Shire, and I'm very, very pleased that they have been recognised for their efforts.
Thank you. So can I invite Colin Campbell to come up to the microphone? And firstly, Colin, we'd like to congratulate you on this honour that you so richly deserve. So please feel free to say a few words.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Pleasure.
It's a great honour to be invited along here tonight. And I guess what happens in these sort of situations, you become almost overwhelmed and very humbled too by the fact that, I mean, I'd look around and see you people here. You meet, what, once a month? Once a month religiously. No kicks for you. And it's just a lot of hard work. And you know, these groups like yourself are the unsung heroes. And I'd like to congratulate you. I think I know probably about one or two I don't know, so that's pretty good here tonight. But I guess the AOO, what's it mean to me? It's an award, and I've worked, I guess, done a lot of work in the wine industry, both at local level, state level, and federal level of politics, and I've got a bit sick of chasing around politicians in Canberra. I remember having 14 meetings in one day up there, and you know, you come home exhausted, but it's the sort of thing we did, and I'm very proud of what we have done. And I think that the greatest thing that's come out of all this is that we're now entering a new era where I hope that Rutherglen will become the muscat centre of the world. And if we can do that, we then have something very, very special that nobody in the world can take from us. So I'd just like by ending on that and saying thank you very much.
Thank you. And of course, Colin was awarded for his amazing contribution to the wine industry. So thank you and congratulations again, Colin. And so Bill Baxter. Congratulations. Now, you, of course, have been awarded as a member of the Order of Australia.
Yes, thank you,
Congratulations.
Madam Mayor. It all gets a bit confusing
Yes.
between OAM, AM,
AMs.
AO and AC. It's
Yes.
not too clear. But thank you very much indeed for your letter of congratulations and the invitation to be here tonight.
Pleasure.
It's a great pleasure. I agree entirely with the remarks that Colin has made. It's great to see the council here, and I thank Councillor Gaffney for his very generous remarks. But it takes me back to when I was the Shire President in Athalia in the 1970s. I was 26. I had 11 council colleagues, all male, all over 60. It was somewhat challenging, and the Shire Secretary had been there for 30 years, unlike Trevor, who's on his first meeting, and I wish Trevor all the best, but Trevor and I actually go back a year or two to previous lives as well. Yep. And I have great respect for his ability, and I'm sure that you'll have a very fruitful association here in Indigo. But there is no doubt that local government is the absolute cusp of democracy. This is really where the local issues are hammered out, unlike state, which is a bit more remote, and Canberra, which seems to spend most of its time on fairly esoteric issues these days, unfortunately. I spent a long time in Parliament. I was well remunerated for that. So I hope my reward is for other things I've done in my life, whether that's been in the Fire Brigade or the VFF or wherever. But it is an honour to receive this sort of recognition, and I deeply appreciate it, and to those people who nominated me, whoever they might have been, I thank them. But hopefully I can keep on contributing for whatever time I might have left on this earth. Colin Campbell's an inspiration for what he does around Rutherglen, and if people can emulate Colin and others, we live in a much better society. But thank you very much, and all the best to the Shire of Indigo.
Thank you, Bill. So, before we go any further, I'd like to ask Bill and Colin to come up in front of the flags just to have a photo with me, and thank you very much for your words. And I think tonight reflects exactly what you're saying. This is real democracy, real interface between the community and those of us that are in decision-making roles. So you're seeing it as it is, yeah.
I never had a gallery like that in my time.
We don't usually.
Thanks again.
Thank you. Okay, thank you very much everyone for allowing us to honour them tonight, and also just a reminder that Francis Walsh is also a recipient who couldn't be here tonight. So moving along, I just need a motion from the CEO to just, sorry, not a motion from the CEO, from Council, but our new CEO will just move around a late item that needs to be put into the agenda.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Can I just ask that a late item or additional item be added to the agenda with your permission? It's actually just a routine monthly report, but was inadvertently left out of the agenda, which relates to the Q Springs Water Extraction Monthly Compliance Report. So if we can ask for a resolution that be accepted and be added at item 11.5.
I'm happy to move that that recommendation be accepted.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Shepherd?
I'm happy to second that, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Shepherd got in first. Okay, thank you. All those in favour? All those in favour? Carried. So I'll now put that in as item 11.5, which is the monthly report on Q Springs water extraction. And so now we're moving to open forum, which is, I imagine, why most of you are here tonight. We have had many, many questions come in, and for the sake of being able to actually cover the issues that seem to be the most relevant to people, our spokesperson, Tennealle Evans, has offered to put 4 questions. I hope that they will cover the issues that are have been put in by everyone. Otherwise, we'd have 100 questions and we'd all be answering the same thing. So we felt that was a reasonable thing to do, and thank you very much, Tennealle, for offering to do that. So we've got 4 questions here from Tennealle, and then we also have 2 from our union representative. So hopefully between those 6, given that many of you are here tonight to talk about the home and community care issue, that these questions will cover off broadly the issues that are being raised by most of you tonight. All right, so let's start with that. The other thing is most of the questions have been prefaced with, let's just say, an essay. I'm not going to allow that tonight. We just need people to actually get to the questions and ask them. So Tennille, if you'd like to ask your 4 questions, and I'll do my best to answer them. If there's anything we can't answer specifically, we'll take them on notice. Yep. Okay, so do come up. Thank you, Tennille.
Time to shine. Okay, thank you, Madam Mayor. As you said, that I did receive permission to ask 4 questions tonight on behalf of the collective group in an attempt to open the door to facilitate positive transition and a council community partnership. The following questions have been endorsed by over 100 signatories to date.
Yep.
As the most important requiring immediate clarification regarding home and community care. Why didn't community consultation occur prior to the recommendation to rescind home and community care?
Okay, so I have to say that's the question that I've been asked the most of.
And it's the one that's provided the most anxiety.
Yeah, and to try and give, I guess, as fair an explanation as I can, the decision to reform the aged care sector funding has actually been a Commonwealth decision. It's not a council decision. So when we consult with the community, they're about decisions that we have some control over, if you like, and that we can get influence from the community about. In this case, the Commonwealth Government indicated quite some time ago, and Council did address this over 2 years ago, that there would be a change in the funding model. And it's that change in the funding model that has brought us to the point where we had to make a consideration, and in our case made the decision to opt for recommending a new provider for HAC services. So the reason we didn't consult is that we couldn't have changed that decision from the Commonwealth Government. So I understand that people feel they weren't asked about it, but in truth, really it's the Commonwealth that should have asked you whether you were happy with that decision or not, much in the same way as the NDIS is not something that we consult on. It's something that's been imposed on us. So,
just to clarify, so when did the Commonwealth tell you that that funding model was changing?
We were notified over 2 years ago that that was impending. It still hasn't happened. So we're acting on the advice from the Commonwealth that it will happen. And I think you asked questions about the timing, why have we gone early, and I'm very happy to answer those. But that's really the answer to that specific question.
So there was no time frame to consult with the community when you were investigating this?
As I said, there was not much we could consult on. The Commonwealth has indicated to us that they are changing the funding model. So we could have said to you, are you happy with that? But there's not much we could have done.
It would have been nice.
So yeah, so 2 years ago we did try and we had this discussion, and it was all in the public.
In 2016, that is correct.
Yeah, so I've answered the question as best as I can.
Council plan actually indicated.
So if you'd like to ask the next question, it might cover off on some of those.
What will the transition actually look like?
So we are developing a joint transition plan with the new provider. Just to give you an update on that, the Commonwealth still hasn't made a decision on who that provider will be. We have made a recommendation to the Commonwealth about a not-for-profit, we're allowed to say that much, organisation. Once that provider has been announced, then we can start going out to the community and saying, okay, this is the new provider, this is how it's going to work, what are your questions, how can we support you with that? We're still waiting for the Commonwealth to let us know that. And we'll be working with clients, volunteers and staff about what that change will mean once we have the new provider with us to do that. We'll be holding town meetings in each of the main towns for people to come along. We also
Will that include facilitation for elderly that can't actually be here?
Sorry?
Will that include facilitation to get the elderly people that can't actually
absolutely.
transport?
We'll be doing, and just, I haven't finished yet. So we will be trying to make sure we have direct contact with all of our clients and our volunteers, and of course we're working with the staff as well at the moment. But I also would at this point like to introduce you to our transition officer, Angela Verdi. So Angela, if you'd like to, other people may not have though, So Angela, we've employed Angela to help with the transition process. So at this stage, again, we're still waiting on the announcement for who the provider will be, and once that happens, Angela will be working very closely with the new provider and with the community. So that's the plan. We're still waiting for the announcement from the Commonwealth Government.
You've pretty much answered the second question, which was what preparation is required from the clients. Obviously, Angela will be heavily involved.
Oh, and just to reiterate that, there's no preparation required from clients. As we've said all along, our aim and our hope is that this will be a seamless transition. Services will continue, and so anyone who's receiving... Just let me finish, Tennille, please. As soon as the transition occurs, there will be no change to service delivery. If you've been receiving a service to date, you will continue to receive that service, but it will be a new provider.
Okay, at June 30.
Yes, well, that's the time frame the Commonwealth is indicating to us.
Okay.
Yep.
Alrighty. How will the Indigo Shire Council ensure that no one is cut off without adequate service provision?
Well, that's absolutely part of why we've decided to make the decision early and to have a long transition time, as long as possible, and to employ Angela to ensure that there's someone with oversight of the transition. So obviously that would be a terrible scenario if anyone was left off. We would be, of course, reacting immediately if we heard about that. But for people who have asked why have we made this decision early, that is actually the very reason why. So rather than waiting until a cut-off date and then hoping everything goes okay, we've made an early decision with all of the transition plans in place so that nobody is left out or something goes wrong without all of us being involved to make sure that it's immediately dealt with if that happens. But we're trying to do everything we can.
So just to clarify, if you currently receive a service from the Indigo Shire, you'll continue to receive so until the 30th of June?
I believe there's some transition already occurred for people with the NDIS scheme, but not with HAC.
If they don't have NDIS?
Yeah, 30th of June, I think, is for HAC services. So, and again, it's very complicated. We've got HAC services, we've got CHSP, we have NDIS. All of these funding models have been changed by the Commonwealth. All of them are things that we currently provide that we're trying to manage a transition for. So it is complex.
So it is very complex.
It is very
the reason why
complex.
communication is so important. So if people are receiving a service from the Indigo Shire, they will continue to do so until they're transitioned into the appropriate funding model?
Yes, and I'll just check that with Mark Florence, our director, but that's absolutely the plan.
So, through the Chair, services that are being provided currently will continue through to June the 30 and be delivered by Indigo Shire. Post June 30, services will be delivered by a new provider. As the Mayor indicated, some clients are transitioning early as if they're eligible for the NDIS, and some of those may be transitioning as early as March or even before that. But certainly to answer your question, from July 1, up until June 30, services delivered by Indigo Shire will be continued to be delivered by Indigo Shire, and from 1st of July, the services will be delivered by a new provider.
Understood. So,
all right. Sorry,
with regards to, sorry, because I don't want to embarrass. So are they eligible for the NDIS or have they got an NDIS plan? Can you please clarify?
Well, it would depend on each client, Tennille, about what state their transition is at the moment, so whether they've been allocated, whether they've met all the eligibility criteria and whether a plan has been issued and approved. So I can't comment on individual cases.
Yeah,
so I'm not asking that.
Okay, Tennille, I'm going to...
Do they need to have their plan in place or are they just needing to make...
Okay, I've got Angela. Angela's making signs. So can I refer you to Angela to discuss after the meeting? Okay, so
I think we need to have a meeting, Madam Mayor.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Tennille. So the next questions are from Martin McDonald from the Australian Services Union. Thanks, Martin. So you've submitted 2 questions?
Yes.
Yep.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. You would have received our petitions, 461 signatures.
We've received them by email, but I believe they're going to be actually submitted tonight in hard copy.
Yeah, they were earlier on tonight to Narelle.
Oh, you've got them. Okay, great. Yeah. So we'll get a councillor to table those as we have to through the local law. Yep, thank you for that.
Yeah, the first question. At the council meeting in December to decide the future of the service delivery of care for your elderly ratepayers, of which over 33% are over 60 years and over, both councillors and council officers stated that the community had been fully consulted. Do you still stand by those comments?
Yeah, so I have to say that I don't believe that is actually an accurate statement, Martin, and if you've got evidence to say somewhere where we said that, you'd have to show it to us. We've asked about that and there's no evidence of that, and as I explained, it was not an issue that we could consult on given that it was the Commonwealth Government's decision. Yeah. So I can't really say any more than that at this stage.
Yeah, well, obviously I'll back that up with something in writing.
Yeah, that would be good. And please, if you do, we'll raise it as business arising at the next meeting and it will be published so people can read it. But if you'd like to ask me the next question, thank you.
Okay. What is Council proposing to do to the support of the hard-working and dedicated staff to try and find meaningfully work in their communities if their jobs no longer exist?
Okay, so I think I've covered some of that, but firstly it's really important to stress that the reason that we made the recommendation that we did, which we're not allowed to tell you about yet until the council says who the Commonwealth allows us to, was that we had a commitment from that organisation that as far as possible they would employ local staff and re-employ the staff that are currently employed in the HAC service. That was one of the issues that was really, really paramount for councillors to take into consideration, because I really would like to say that we hold our staff and the quality and care that they've provided to our community in the highest regard. So making sure that people's jobs were going to be continued on and that local people would be employed was really, really critical for us when we considered who to recommend to the Commonwealth. As I said, we've employed Angela and our staff are working with, I know the union's been involved, and with workers to prepare for this transition. Obviously, we've used all the requirements under the enterprise agreement. There's been one-on-one meetings taking place with staff, and those that haven't yet had a meeting have one scheduled over the coming week to explain their entitlements and also to provide additional job search support. And we also have on-site availability for the employee assistance program for people that might want support or counselling around what's happening. And of course, affected staff will receive their full entitlements. So as I can't say more strongly how much it was an issue for councillors to get a commitment from the recommended provider that the welfare not only of our clients but of our staff would be absolutely paramount, and that the quality of the services being provided would be of the highest standard. So that's the recommendation. That's the guarantee they've given to us, and we can only hope that everything that we're putting in place will ensure that that's the case.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, no, I've just been dealing with emotional and stressed, you know.
Of course.
Yeah, the uncertainty.
It's a really difficult time, and again, this is not a decision that we went looking for. This is a change in funding from the Commonwealth Government. We feel very concerned about the wellbeing of our staff, as well as our clients and our volunteers. And as I can say, you know, we've done everything we can to ensure that the new service is provided as smoothly as possible, the transition is seamless, and that the staff get jobs with the new providers. That's what we've been seeking. All right, so thank you very much, Martin and to Neil. The next question is also, oh, that one's from, okay, from Sandra Williams. Sandra, yes. So Sandra, I'm going to have to hold you to my previous comments about not preempting your question with a lot of statements. So if you'd just like to cut to your two questions.
Thank you. It was a qualifying paragraph.
Yeah.
But I'll do my best to praise it.
Thank you.
It's generally about the chainsawing of centuries-old and decades-old trees on heritage properties in Beechworth. The particular one I'm talking about at the moment, and it's all over social media, is one on Mayday Hills here. It's a giant, healthy, it seems, pre-European settlement brittle gum, and it has just been chainsawn to the ground behind the morgue area here. So my question is, was permission sought for this? By whom? For what stated reason? And was it granted and documented by council?
Yes, so we were alerted to this after it had happened. Permission was not sought. We've had a meeting today with Heritage Victoria and the owner of the site to discuss this matter. There will be further action taken. And we've also requested to our officers that we have a discussion about the ongoing management of the trees in Mayday Hill, because clearly it's a problem and it's something that we're very concerned about. At the site, the permits have to be going through Heritage Victoria. There was no permit sought. Heritage Victoria is dealing with this matter in conjunction with us.
Thank you. That's heartening, thank you, because it's very, very upsetting.
It is upsetting.
And a betrayal of trust for a lot of people.
Yes.
Just also the similar situation of the old jail.
Yep.
A very significant white poplar was removed there. I understand, of course, that that was by Heritage Victoria's order or authority. And I just wonder if councils, on behalf of ratepayers and the community, can in any way be associated with such a deed, so that consultation may perhaps happen with the community.
So it's the issue with the old jail is a difficult one from a council point of view, because of course it is such a well-loved asset of the community and people feel very, you know, it's very important to the community. However, it is actually privately owned, and therefore we're in a situation where, as long as the heritage overlay conditions are met, and in this case Heritage Victoria gave permission, we don't have a role in what can happen there. We have had conversations with the owners to say it's probably a good PR thing to let people know what's happening, but we don't have any actual jurisdiction over what happens there, aside from any planning permits and things like that that we're required to assist with.
Right.
So in that case, no, we had no say over it.
I see.
Yeah.
And as far as planning permits are concerned, I believe it's going to be in the area of a bus station that's planned for the area.
I can't actually answer that. I can take that on notice. Yep, we'll take that on notice. And
I can provide a brief answer. So council's involved in planning permits for the uses, various uses that are being proposed for the jail in total. Part of that includes bus parking and car parking provisions, so that's where council is involved, but certainly not involved in the removal of the trees.
Oh no, I understand that.
Yep.
I totally understand that.
Thank you.
And,
sorry, have you got another one? I think that was the two you submitted, Sandra.
Yes. Okay,
Thank you.
You've answered
Thank
that.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So the next question's from Ed Tyree. Ed, we've probably answered one question, which was, are we going to have the... Sorry, Roberta, Ed's just trying to get... It's a bit squished. Oh, thank you. Oh, sure. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for... Sure. Thank you for attending the meeting.
You're right, sweetie. There you go. No, you're right. No, it's okay.
sorry, we'll resume the meeting. Is this the petition? We're not up to that yet, are we? Okay, so Ed. Ed, you asked, one question was about the monthly report on Q Springs, and as the CEO explained, it was inadvertently left off. At this stage, yes, it is on the agenda for every month.
I'm glad that's the case.
Yes. So you had a second question.
I did have a second question. Can I just say that I want to assure you and the councillors and the community that the end of the court case is not the end of the matter.
Yes.
There seems to be a perception that the legal case is over and that's the end of the matter. That's not the case.
That's not the
There are plenty
case.
of other things to do.
Thank you.
But Council has been involved in the drafting of amendments to the planning scheme together with Alpine Shire and Toowong Shire. They're specifically aimed at monitoring the issues that were in the other part of my question, that,
Yep.
The amenity issues, noise, traffic, transport, etc. Could you tell me the current position in relation to those draft amendments? Because on the DELP website, comments are closed. And they have been closed for, I understand, over a fortnight, 3 weeks now. So
Okay.
where are we with
so
that?
I'm going to ask Director of, I was going to say, Planning and Community Services. Yeah.
Thanks, Ed, for the question. Most of it I'll have to take on notice because I'm aware that it has closed. I know that DELP are considering it, but I'll find out the exact status and I can communicate that to you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Ed. The next one is from Jeff Palmer. Welcome.
Madam Mayor and councillors, first, if I may, I'd just like to congratulate the CEO on his appointment, and I wish him luck. He might need it. And if I may,
thank you, Mr. Palmer.
If I could comment, we had a great number of people in the audience tonight. I wonder if that gives a message. Why did they have to attend a council meeting, and why did we have to have the numbers of our questions restricted to have just a few people? The thing is important. This is about communication. And I would suggest to you, Mayor and councillors, that we have been lacking in properly and responsibly communicating this very important change to our most vulnerable in the community. We have been deficient to the extent that they had to come along here tonight.
Thank you, Jeff. We understand people are feeling very strongly about it. We are just... I'm going to cut you off on there because you're just making a comment, not asking questions, and you didn't submit on this issue. However, just to reassure you, we are very aware of it and we are actually doing a range of things. There are people that don't like the decision, we understand that, but in fact we have been doing a lot of work with the community. However, if you'd like to ask the questions that you submitted.
I will, but your communication is lacking on that subject and several others.
Right,
I'm happy to discuss it with you outside this
Absolutely.
meeting, but it's important.
Okay, we can make
You're
an appointment.
losing the plot. The last report on the... I've got two questions on two subject matters, the Beechworth to Yakandanda Rail Trail.
Yes.
The last report on this project to Council and ratepayers was at the September 26th meeting of Council, at which time Council was advised that officers were currently preparing an engagement plan incorporating public meetings to ensure the community was kept informed of issues around the rail trail design, approvals and construction timeframes. Now, Vic Roads has been active in arranging meetings with the community at the Yak Market and other places. My question to you is, how many meetings were arranged by Council staff, and what impact did ratepayers' comment or contribution from those meetings have on the final outcome or indeed the decision to proceed?
Okay, so I think there were 6 meetings organised by Indigo Shire Council, 2 in each town, 1 in the mornings, 1 in the evenings, and they were attended by, overall, I can't tell you the number of how many attended. As to what contribution they had, all of their comments were taken into account, not in the decision to proceed, because that decision was made quite some time ago, but in terms of the ongoing community engagement around information flows to the community and what people wanted from that.
Well, maybe part of the questions that come out of your response is asked in my second question. Is it correct that Indigo Shire Council committed to spending $1 million on the trail?
Yep.
When and how was that commitment conveyed to ratepayers? And is it the case that expense associated with the cycle underpass has blown out to more than $300,000 versus the $250,000 that was approved originally?
Yeah, so just to, I guess, to explain the $1 million, we put in $1 million over 4 years to receive a $12 million grant. So as is always the case with grants from local government coming from Commonwealth and state, we have to contribute. That seemed like a good investment to us to get $12 million for a $1 million investment. That's over 4 years, and part of that money is what's being used now to do the underpass. I know there's been discussion about why is the underpass being built now before the rest of the trail. Basically, because Vic Roads was doing that intersection, it made sense, rather than inconveniencing the community again and doing the whole thing again, for us to back up on that project and put in the underpass while that work was being done on the intersection, which also saved us around, I think it was around $300,000. So that's the story about the underpass. And it does look a bit odd. It doesn't start anywhere and it doesn't go anywhere, but it was to do with an opportunity both to save money and to reduce the inconvenience to the community to do that now. As far as the blowout, more from 250 to 300. Ian Ellett, would you like to answer that?
Yeah, well, thank you. Thanks, Jeff. Look, the cost of the underpass is more than 300, but it's not a blowout. The cost was always in the 300 to 300 plus range. We had independent estimates before we were able to partner with Vic Roads that component of the project would have probably been more than 400,000. Now, we're probably not comparing apples with apples because the section they build will be an underpass. It won't have the trail and signage and everything like that. So it's not quite an apples with apples comparison. When we sought additional funding into the budget of 250, it was to bring the allocation in the current year from 250 up to 500, and that was to enable us to confirm with Vic Roads that we were on board for that underpass, but it was never a 250,000. We estimated at approximately 300 in that council report, and the figure that Vic Roads come back with after tendering the works was around 329. I can't remember the exact number.
Okay, so your third question, please, Jeff.
If I may, you've omitted to answer the second part of my question. You talked a lot, but you didn't answer the question. How was the commitment of $1 million conveyed to ratepayers?
In the budget. That's how it's conveyed. It was in the budget, which is an open, available public document. So your third question, please, Jeff.
In which budget?
In the budget 2016-17.
If I can just add some clarity. So the amount allocated in the current year was 250.
Correct.
But in the council's endorsement at the same council meeting, I hope I'm standing close enough to the mic, the same council meeting that the budget was adopted, the long-term capital works program was endorsed, and
in the
within
CapEx,
that, within that document there was a further $750,000 endorsed by council.
Okay, my final question relates to the draft economic development strategy document that's dated in September. Will Council report to ratepayers on the status of that draft document and confirm that the financial implications across the 40 named key priority activities amounts to $4.4 million or somewhere thereabouts, of which $3.8 million, or 86%, is associated with a single identified activity, namely progressing the North East Region Tracks and Trails Extension enhancement, and specifically from Beechworth to Osborne's Flat and Osborne's Flat to the Huon, which activity is not mentioned anywhere else in the document. We're spending $3.8 million, 86% of the amount allocated in that document.
Thank you, Jeff.
Okay.
In relation to the status of the document, It's come to council. Council's requested further work on it. It will be returned to council in a draft form. It will be put back out to the community. Again, you can then submit to that if you would like. So it's nowhere near being ready for endorsement. Does that answer your question? So the rest of it will all be addressed in the review.
Again, it's a matter of communication, Mayor. This council's failing badly. That document is little short of being materially inadequate in its content. Materially inadequate.
Thank you,
and yet
Jeff.
you put it out for public comment.
I think you
it's
can't
not
keep
satisfactory.
commenting. It has
thank
just
you, Mayor,
gone
for your
out
time,
for
and
comment.
thank you for your answers.
Thank you. Just to clarify, in relation to what you just said, rather than leaving it there, that document came to council, and because we wanted more work done on it, it has gone back for further review and further work. So that is not the final draft document, just to be clear. So, number 8.
Excuse me, Madam Mayor. Can I make a point here?
Yes, you can.
Yeah, if he continues to behave like this, he should be warned, and if he fails to comply with your request, he should be asked to leave the meeting, because at the moment his behaviour is inadequate.
Well, I like to give people an opportunity to state their views, but I will say that I think there's a point where we need to just keep things in line with the meeting procedures. So the next one is... Jeff...
I have not been able to hear what he said, and people on the video broadcast probably cannot hear what he said.
Okay.
I'm grateful if he could put it on and repeat it.
So just to be clear, what the councillor requested of me was that I enforce the meeting procedures, which are that people can ask question but not enter debate and not make comment. So I'm going to now enforce that. Mr McLeish.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and it's a pleasure to have our councillors back after their well-earned rest over Christmas.
Thank you,
and I hope that you all and our new CEO are ready for an active year and a progressive year.
Thank you.
My first question relates to the Cagunya Hall, and I apologise, it will have a prologue which is necessary to explain the issue which I'm going to talk about. When will the health and safety improvements and building upgrades required on the Cagunya Hall be carried out? It seems this work once again has been deferred as council continues to seek a government grant. The Cagunya people have raised funds to assist with the work required. They've had an architect prepare plans and obtain estimates for the work to be carried out. Council continues to absolve itself of its responsibility as the hall is located on Crown land and is currently managed by the Department of Environment, Land, Water and Planning. It claims it has no funds available.
Okay, so I'm going to
cut
cut
you. The
you.
Lands Reserve Act of 1978 establishes that the Governor and Council may, by order, direct the reserve lands vest in the municipality. When will Council take steps to take over management of this facility and do what we expect?
Right, thank you. So the question was, when will the health and safety improvements and building upgrade required on the Cagunya Hall be carried out? The answer is, it is subject to a grant. We are seeking those grants. We've already discussed the fact that if we can't find a grant, we need to bring it back to council to consider what to do next. But of course, with our budget constraints, we always look for grants where we can for improving things like infrastructure such as this. So that's the answer. Your next question.
When do you anticipate that the grant application will be responded to?
Well, we're looking now, we were just discussing it today actually, and we haven't been able to find a grant that is appropriate, so we're now saying we want it brought back to council for further consideration by council. But of course, all this has to be done within the budget. So your second question.
The Chinese Garden Rail Bridge. What is the state of progress on the Chinese Gardens Rail Bridge? Has council obtained a structural engineer's report on the integrity of the existing bridge and its suitability for use by cyclists and pedestrians?
Okay, thank you. My understanding is the works commenced last week. Is that correct? And do you want to answer the question about did we seek an engineer's report?
Yeah, I'm happy to. Thanks, Robin. So, yeah, the question was written, when were works commencing, and it was late last week, I think about Friday, but they've certainly underway. And yes, the works were informed by a structural engineer's report. We have all of our bridges assessed on a periodic basis, and that bridge was assessed probably a couple of years ago. And so that's what's brought it to the top of the replacement list.
Okay, thank you.
Assessment available to the public? Because you haven't answered my question whether it was structurally sound. That was the question. Has a structural engineer gauged the structural integrity of the existing bridge?
So
it's fit for purpose.
All right, so the question is on notice, can Mr McLeish see the engineer's report for the bridge? Can you answer that?
Oh, look,
or do you want to take it on
normally
notice?
wouldn't hand that sort of information out. I guess what I would say in answer to your comment is that being structurally sound is not a yes-no answer. There were certainly elements of that bridge, particularly in the foundations, that needed fairly desperate work. Also the decking, and in recent months we put a covering on to protect that, so we've been able to keep it going until this point. But the engineer's report certainly recommended that it be replaced on structural grounds.
All right, thank you, Mr McLeish.
I can assume then it's council's
thank you, Mr McLeish. Thank you, Mr McLeish. Robin, please. That was not what you submitted.
Of the original bridge for the amusement of visiting tourists and cyclists.
I can't get him off. Okay,
waste of money.
Robin, thank you. They're not the questions you submitted.
It was a delight to attend.
It was lovely to have you. So the Waganya Racecourse and Recreation Reserve, we have Wes and Ray.
Sorry, Madam Mayor, before that commences, can I just reiterate?
So, hang on, I've got a comment here from Councillor Goldsworthy. Yes, Councillor.
So, Section 48 of our local law talks about behaviour of people, and the chairperson shall call to order any member of the public who is disruptive or unruly during the meeting. If a member of the public continues to disrupt the meeting after being called to order, the chairperson may order that person to leave the meeting. The person ordered to leave the meeting must do so immediately and without further disruption. There's a penalty of 5 penalty units, which I think is at least $500. So what I'm calling on is if they continue to disrupt the meeting, they should be asked to leave.
All right, thank you for that. And I will say that it is my decision, and I actually do think it's reasonable for people in the public to state briefly their views, but there is also a point where I do ask you to no longer continue, and I did that with both Mr McLeish and Mr Palmer. So that was my call. No. Oh, okay. All right, so sorry about that, but you did hear my response. And I would like to move on to, and I will say now to the members of the gallery, if you keep interrupting, I will have to ask you to leave the meeting. So please do not continue to interrupt. Question number 9 is from Ray.
Okay.
Ray, we have, again, you've got a lot of background here. Can you ask the question you want to ask? Because there wasn't actually a question in this. So if you could just phrase it as a question, please.
No, that's right. You've got our proposal there that we did put in 2017.
Yep.
We didn't have a seconder for that, so it failed on that time. But on that stage, there was going to be a solar funding program was formed, okay? Our question is, we've given all our internal interval usage data to Helen and Jill and are waiting for their recommendation on design, size and costings. We are again seeking council financial support and require the council's approval for this much needed environmental and cost-saving community project.
So what I can say is that this issue is being dealt with tonight in agenda item 11.1 if you want to hang around for that. So it has been something we've decided to address in this meeting tonight. Okay, so I can't tell you any more than that because it has to be discussed by council. So that's the answer. Thank you.
That is the answer?
Yep.
But
that's the answer.
Well, it's not really a good answer, is it? Because,
Ray, that's the answer. We are discussing it later in the meeting, and so I can't preempt a decision prior to the decision at 11.1, 10.1, sorry, which is the mid-budget review.
What time will that meeting be held?
That meeting's tonight. It's tonight in this meeting.
Yeah, all right.
So it's the first item. So if you'd like to take a seat, you'll hear the discussion.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. So, Alan Davis.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. First question was to Greg Pinkerton when he was acting CEO. You wrote a letter to Mr Bill Tilley stating that why do you insist a few ratepayers of Woolshed Road don't support the road being sealed?
Thanks for the question. I would need to review that letter. It's certainly not taken out of context. I can't really answer that. I'm quite happy to take it on notice and reply to you about the context of that. You had me confused for a bit. I didn't realise that this was a letter. I thought that you might have been referring to a statement. So if I can take that on notice, and I'll get back to you with an answer on that one.
Okay, and question 2.
Yeah, these have all come out of the one letter.
I'm sorry?
These questions have come out of the letter
okay,
that
great.
the council staff have wrote to Mr Bill Tilley.
All right, so your next question?
And Mr Tilley asked 3 times for a letter.
Okay, I'll have to take that on notice, Alan. I don't know anything about the letter.
To Ian, have you worked out just how many truck and trailer loads of gravel would be required to gravel Woolshed Road to the 3 to 4 inches thick that you quote? Yes.
No, look, Ellen, I haven't done a calculation to work out how many truck and trailer loads, so again, if that was in a letter, I'm happy to refer to that. But I guess to answer your question, our gravel resheeting to put gravel on a road typically costs around $4 a square metre. So if we were to apply that, say, on a 5 metre wide road, you can say that's around $20,000 per kilometre. I'm not quite sure what length of Woolshed Road you're looking for, but council fund a resheeting program annually of around $600,000. We've got over 900 kilometres of gravel road, and look, they're done on a priority basis, and it may well be Woolshed Road or part of that road's turn again, but I haven't got that information in front of me.
Okay.
Madam Mayor,
yes.
The reason I asked that question is because they quoted 3 to 4 inches, and I've never seen that in my life.
Okay, thank you. And your third question?
Can we table this letter?
Yes, certainly. You can table it now.
The wife has got them, and she's got a number for each councillor and the CEO.
All right, if you just hand them to me, thank you. Yes, and I'll give them to our EA, and Narelle will look after them. You have to concentrate on the meeting, councillor. All right, so thank you. All right, so that is the end of the public forum for this evening. Thank you all for your input. And we are now moving on to condolences. Are there any condolence motions tonight? No. Confirmation of minutes from the previous meetings. Do I have someone to confirm the minutes from the previous meetings? Do I have a councillor to do that? Councillor Murdoch, thank you. A seconder? Yes, Councillor Shepherd. All those in favour? Thank you. Business arising from the previous minutes. Do I have any business arising? No. Deputations and petitions. We do have a petition to be tabled this evening. I believe Councillor Trenner is
Madam
going to...
Mayor, yes, I have a petition.
Thank you.
And there's a bit of a process. I'll go through that if I can. So there's, I can give you the preamble that's written here in regards to what people have signed to. The lead petitioner is Billy King, and the preamble is: the residents of Indigo Shire Council petition the council to retain home care services for the benefit of senior residents. We are concerned that over 33% of residents within Indigo Shire are over the age of 60 and sometime soon will need quality care which should be delivered by council. We believe the decision has lacked any consultation with the community and urge councillors to rectify this. We are also concerned that council is making a premature decision to exit the provision of home care services while the Commonwealth Government has yet to decide on the precise character of the home care services into the future. And not too much more to go. It would be a tremendous shame for residents to lose access to a quality local service on the basis of a decision made on incomplete information. We urge councillors not to exit home care services permanently and to canvass in a more extensive way the views of local residents in respect to the quality of home care services currently on offer from the council. So there was 461 signatures on the petition, and I'd just like to move that the petition be received.
And was there a request that the CEO provide?
I can do that, and any other administration action appropriate. Is that what you're after?
Okay. Yeah, there was actually a request that... Can you bring it around? Yeah, thank you. Sorry, just to ensure that it is actually...
Can I have that then?
Discussed, yeah, sorry. I haven't got it.
So in the local law it says any other administrative action appropriate, so I don't know whether that will do. So I can move that the petition be received and any other administration action be that needs to be done that's appropriate.
So, Councillor, can I ask, perhaps you might add to that, is that you authorise myself to provide a written response to that petition?
I would like to also authorise the CEO to give a written response to that petition.
And a copy of that response then will be documented at the next council meeting under business arising.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. All those in favour? Thank you. And the reason we did that was just to ensure that there was a response to the petition in the next council meeting, rather than it just being tabled and left at that. Okay, thank you. So, item 10.1 is the mid-year financial and performance statement. So the recommendation is that council accepts the mid-year finance... Sorry, Councillor Goldsworthy, thank you.
So I'd like to move the recommendation as stated, but add a third dot point to it, please.
Yes.
I'll read that out.
Yep.
And I've provided a copy to the councillors earlier.
Can you speak a bit closer to your microphone?
Yep.
It's a bit hard
so
to hear.
that the council include in the 2017-18 mid-year budget review a $10,000 allocation for co-funding of solar power projects, that the Waganya Recreation Reserve be prioritised in relation to the funding of solar power with a co-contribution to be negotiated, and this is in lieu of a strategy yet to be developed on the council solar grants policy.
All right. So you've moved that motion. Do I have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Murdoch? Does anyone wish to speak? Do you wish to speak to the motion, Councillor?
Yes, I'm quite happy to speak to it. For one, the mid-year financial performance statement is a very good outlook for the Shire, and certainly with the contribution of grants that we've received prior to next year, with the cash position of the Shire is looking very good, so I think there's some heart to be taken in that. It will show a cash position for next year not as favourable, but we're still going in the right direction. In relation to the third point that I've actually listed, I know that there was considerable discussion at the budget development last year, and we had a submission from the Waganya Recreation Reserve in relation to solar power. We've taken the steps to actually get the usage from the Waganya Rec Reserve. We've had it independently analysed, and there are a couple of systems that could be utilised. Given that we haven't as yet developed a solar grants policy, even though we are in the throes of doing that, I believe that we should support the Waganya Rec Reserve in this instance. It's isolated. I don't think it should be taken as how we'll treat future requests for solar power, but I believe in this instance we should support the Waganya Rec Reserve in getting solar power up to a maximum of $10,000, but that matter should be negotiated with them.
Okay, does anyone else wish to speak to the motion? Barb, do you wish to speak to the motion? Reserve your right. Any other councillor wish to speak? Yes, Councillor Gaffney.
with the extra part 3, when you say co-funding for the 10,000, do you mean that the recreation reserve at Waganya has to put in 10,000 to match that? I'm just a bit worried about that word co-funding if they didn't have the cash.
All right, thank you. Do you want to answer that, Councillor?
That's not my intention from this. It's that the Indigo Shire make an allocation of $10,000 in this year's budget, and that the discussion be undertaken with the Recreation Reserve around a possible co-funding contribution. So it's a maximum of 10,000 for the Shire, and whatever else is beyond that needs to be discussed with the Rec Reserve.
Okay. Anyone else wish to speak to it? Yes?
On page 19 of this report, it talks about Lake King being a project deferred, and also further down when it talks about major projects completed or underway, it talks about the Rutherglen Revitalisation project, and it talks about it being a multi-year project that has been revised for a completion date in June 2019. I've mentioned this to the CEO, and he's advised me that he will bring a progress report on these matters to a briefing meeting of Council.
Thank you, Councillor. Does anyone else wish to speak to the motion? Councillor Trenery.
With the risk of Wes and Ray giving me a clip in the ear on the way through, I'm going to speak against Councillor Goldsworthy's proposal, the amendment or the add-on part, not because of the project, not because of the people, but because of the lack of governance. We've got 20, 30, 40, 50 projects that's been on the books for years that are fantastic projects. Absolutely fantastic. And I just, their passionate plea at the community meeting was fantastic. It was honest and it was real. But I dare say we'll have that same sort of plea when we get to Yakandana about a disabled toilet. And I don't know whether we're going to change the budget then and there as well, without any governance or any forethought. And I wouldn't mind Councillor Goldsworthy answering whether this is going further to our deficit or whether we're going to remove a project from another community at the value of $10,000. Part of the question, I'll just keep talking after that.
Do you wish to answer that?
Sure.
It's actually a question, direct question. Yeah, go for it.
Look, we had initial budget discussions in the middle of last year, and we spoke about $250,000 being allocated towards various projects. We actually fell short of that mark when we were deciding projects. There was in the vicinity of at least $10,000 that we didn't allocate, and it was my understanding that that would go towards developing a solar grants program. That hasn't occurred as yet. From what I understand, that $10,000 wasn't listed in the budget. So yes, it would fall to the bottom line as to what our position is. But I believe in this instance, and I'm a firm believer that we should follow due process. I think in this instance we need to correct something that wasn't done quite right in the past.
Thank you. And just with that comment, I know you do, as a general rule, want to follow due process, but that's not what's happening here. We're not following due process. We're not paying the respect to this budget that we should. We'll spend 6 months making up the next budget, and for what? We can change it at any time, or if a project comes along that's worthy, we'll change it. This project is worthy. It's good value for money, and it's a community that gets off their butt and has a crack, which is fantastic. But we've got a lot of those communities around who've got a lot of these projects. Right. So I can't vote for this motion based on process.
All right, thank you, Councillor. Anyone else wish to speak to the motion? Yep, Councillor Price.
On the item itself, I agree with some of Councillor Gaffney's sentiment, and I'm also concerned with the way that we discuss the projects, that they are underway or deferred or delayed. I think that the community perception is that they are either underway or delayed, and that the deferral doesn't come into play there. To the point, to Councillor Goldsworthy's third addition to the recommendation, I agree that we still need to get the community solar grant together, and there is good work going into that, but I think that has taken a lot longer than we anticipated. And for that reason, I I would be willing to support this application. We've had a lot of conversation with the Gunya Recreation Reserve about their business case, and it's well supported by the independent data that we've just received. So I just see this as the first project of that community grants program before it begins.
Councillor Shepherd.
When we were discussing this last year, I was made very aware that the community felt that that was really meant to be added to that building, and they had a complete expectation that it was part of the project, and they were quite affronted that because it went over budget, that through no fault of their own, they say that they missed out on that. So it's sort of got a different special circumstance around it for me. I still am I'm very keen to be able to support the community on solar throughout all the other opportunities that we're going to have once we do this strategy. But at the moment, I understand that the Waganya community feel that they're sort of like owed this, and whether we agree with that or not, it's been a supposition that I've heard now for quite a while. So. So it's an interesting addition you've added, Councillor.
Councillor Murdoch.
Thank you. One of the reasons I'm supporting it is because, one, they are a great community who work really hard to do things. Also, if they have the solar power, it means that their bills will come down, and if their bills come down, they will save money and probably put that towards the next project. So for me, I think in the end, we're actually saving ourselves by getting them to do it, because they probably won't ask for as much next time. So thank you.
Would you like to sum up, Councillor?
I would. Look, it is the mid-year budget review. It is our opportunity to look at our expenses and our revenue, and I just feel that this is a worthy exception to our rules that we would ordinarily apply. And I'm wholeheartedly in support of getting up the council solar grants policy, but I think we need to do this.
Okay, so I will put the recommendation that Council 1 accepts the mid-year finance and performance report, noting the progress against Council's annual council plan action list, the advocacy plan, the operating budget and the capital works program. 2, adopts the year-end forecast figures for both operating and capital, and directs the CEO to report against these forecast figures for the remainder of the financial year. And 3, that Council include in the 17-18 mid-year budget review a $10,000 allocation for co-funding of solar power projects, that the Waganya Recreation Reserve be prioritised in relation to funding solar power, with the co-contribution to be negotiated. Okay. Put the motion. All those in favour? Against? Thank you, Councillor. Carried. See, was it worth the wait? Yeah, I thought it was. All right. Item 10.2, the January financial report. The recommendation is that Council accepts the monthly financial report as at January 31, 2018. Do I have someone to move that? Councillor Goldsworthy, seconder. Councillor Gaffney. Anyone wish to speak to the motion? All those in favour? Carried. Thank you. 10.3 is the Assembly of Councillors record. This is a requirement for the state government. The recommendation is that Council accepts the attached Assembly of Councillor records. Do I have someone to move that? Councillor Price. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Murdoch. Does anyone wish to speak to the motion? All those in favour? Carried. 10.4, Council Advisory Committee meetings. The recommendation is that Council receives the attached unconfirmed Advisory Committee minutes and endorses the officer comments. They're all available for anyone to read in the agenda online. Do I have someone to move that? Councillor Murdoch, seconded Councillor Gaffney. Anyone wish to speak to the motion? All those in favour?
I was just going to say one thing, Madam Mayor, and
You're
that
too
is
slow.
at the next monthly agenda, we should have the minutes of the Waggunya Railway Reserve Advisory Committee.
Thank you for that. All those in favour of the motion as put? Carried. Thank you. Items 11 from Development and Community Services Department. So 11.1 is the draft active Indigo recreation strategy. So just to give you an update, this has been out for consultation. This is what used to be called the rec plan, the recreation plan. Now it's called the active Indigo recreation strategy, and it has been out for draft, and there's been a lot of community involvement. The recommendation is that Council endorses the draft active Indigo recreation strategy 2018 to 2026 and approves the placement of the strategy on exhibition for public comment for a period of 30 days. Oh, 60, oh, sorry, I beg your pardon. Councillor Gaffney.
I'd just like to amend the recommendation and make the motion that the strategy on exhibition for public comment for a period of 60 days.
Yes, thank you very much. So do I have a seconder for that? Councillor Goldsworthy. Anyone, or do you wish to speak to the motion, Councillor? Nope. Anyone? Yes, Councillor Goldsworthy. Who wishes to? Councillor Gaffney, you moved it.
I just wanted it changed from 30 days to 60 to give the clubs an opportunity to meet with their members and their executive and to share the document with them. I'm told that all sporting clubs in Indigo Shire will receive a letter regarding the strategy and if they'd like to comment.
Okay, Councillor Goldsworthy.
Thank you. This is a significant piece of work that the Indigo Shire has undertaken. It falls into a number of different categories. It'll influence our health and wellbeing of our communities going forward. It will certainly influence the capital works program going forward. It'll impact on our next year's budget. This is how we behave as a community almost, and there's a significant shift in there. We'll be moving away in the short term from some of the funding that we provide for infrastructure type things, and we'll be looking at programs that we run, so that'll be something different. I hope that we get some strong community response in relation to it so that we know exactly what the community wants going forward. This is a plan that will influence a lot of what we do.
Yep. Anyone else wish to speak to this motion? Councillor Price.
I'd just like to commend the steering group and the consultant, Wendy Holland, because she's engaged in extensive community engagement and research. So I'd just like to highlight that the 382 responses to the survey. There was a survey for sports clubs and organisations, for the sporting associations. There was a school survey, 16 stakeholder meetings with clubs, committees of management, state government, health agencies, state sporting associations, councillors and council staff, 5 listening posts with 187 participants, and there was benchmarking done. I think that this is a real credit to us, this strategy, and although we've received all of that participation in the strategy, this is how it's been interpreted, and we realise that we may have interpreted some parts of it differently to how it was intended. So that's where we flip it back to the community and we say, is this appropriate for your town? Is this appropriate for your sport or for your committee? So, but I commend it to council.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else wish to speak to the motion? Do you wish to sum up, Councillor Gaffney? All right, so I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Carried. Thank you. 11.2 is planning permit application PP 160173.1 Thompson. The recommendation is that Council approves the application, as I just read, to amend the planning permit for the use and development of 93 Hopetoun Road for the purposes of a dwelling and to issue a notice of decision to amend the permit by endorsing the amended plans. Do I have someone to move this? Councillor Murdoch. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Trenery. Do you wish to speak to the motion, Councillor?
My understanding is that this block has already had a permit on it. It's really basically just a change of position and getting another permit.
Okay.
Is that right? I hope so. and it is very, very close to the township, and to the point where you could almost say it is part of the township. So I think that it's a logical issue here.
Okay, Councillor Trenary.
I've always agreed that protecting farming land is paramount in our area, in our shire, but common sense has to prevail on occasion, and obviously the common sense solution for this block of land, it's never going to be turned into farmland again, so let's utilise it.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else wish to speak to the motion? I put the motion. All those in favour? Carried. Item 11.3 is planning permit application P170146, and the recommendation is that Council resolves to approve this permit to use and develop Crown Allotment 4, Section 17, Parish of Carlisle, Hopetoun Road, Rutherglen, for the purpose of a dwelling, in accordance with the plan submitted with the application and subject to the conditions as outlined below, which take up many pages, and I'm not going to read them all. So do I have someone to move that motion? Councillor Shepherd, seconded Councillor Murdoch. Do you wish to speak to the motion, Councillor?
Yes, it's for our approval. If you have a look at the map, it fills in that little corner of the general residential zone. It makes sense to allow for this application to be approved. There's no real reason for it. There are quite a number of subject to, which has to happen first, and I commend this to the council.
All right, Councillor Murdoch, do you wish to say anything? No, I think I concur. Anyone else wish to speak to this? I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Carried. So 11.4 is planning permit application PP170240. The recommendation is that Council resolves to refuse this planning permit application to use and develop Lot 1 on Title Plan 5092D, being Crown Allotments 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, Section 6, and Crown Allotments 1 and 2, Section 7, Township, in the parish of Norong, Moodamere Road, Norong, for the purpose of a dwelling on the following grounds as outlined, and I won't go into all of those here, but they're all available to be read. Do I have someone to move this? Yes, certainly.
Just wondering in relation to the plan that was put in around planting olives, as to whether the Director for Development and Community Service can answer the type of soil that's there. I'm led to believe that it's medium to heavy clay, and is that conducive to growing olive trees?
Thanks for the question. Probably the short answer is probably not overly suitable and would require significant work and attention. So really olives would be something very difficult to grow.
I've just got a few follow-on questions.
Certainly.
Are you aware that the maturity for olive trees is in the vicinity of 5 years to give a crop and about 10 years to get full maturity? Is that about right?
That's about right, yes.
So given that, do you have any confidence that the plan that was put in by the applicant is accurate? Yeah.
I would say it's potentially unrealistic to expect the delivery of that plan in the timeframe that's suggested.
Anyone else wish to speak to the motion? Councillor Gaffney.
This is a block of 3.9 hectares. It's a beautiful block. It adjoins a camping area on Lake Moodamere, opposite on the other side of the road, which leads down to the lake. There's almost an identical block that council at some stage has granted a planning permit. They've built a huge house, and by the looks of it, there's a family living there with jumping for horses and some stock on it.
Do you have a question, councillor?
I'm commenting on the motion. You asked me
I
whether
haven't put the motion yet.
No,
Sorry, Councillor Goldsworthy was just asking questions for clarification.
Oh, I see.
So I'll put the motion that council resolves to refuse the planning permit as I read. Do I have someone to move that motion? Councillor Goldsworthy. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Price. Do you wish to speak to the motion first, councillor?
Sure.
Go ahead.
The recommendation as put by the staff has a fair foundation behind it. I believe that the plan that was submitted as to the reasons why the applicant needs to have a residential property there is not that accurate. And I believe that if he did plant olive trees, they most likely would go feral, and there would be a problem with feral olive trees in the nearby reserve. And I don't believe that there'll ever be an olive grove that makes money out of that location. A requirement for any property under 40 hectares is to get a planning permit from council, and there's a number of conditions, and I don't believe he meets virtually any of them. So
Okay.
I believe we should refuse the permit.
Thank you. Seconder, Councillor Price, do you wish to speak? You reserve your right. Does anyone else wish to speak? Councillor Gaffney.
I just about finished what I had to say. To say that the olive grove would more or less go feral, I think, is taking a long bow. There's evidence that people occupy the shed and domicile there, whether it's permanent or from time to time. As I said, the block opposite, which is of almost identical size, has a house on it. There are other dwellings around the area on blocks not much bigger than the one we're talking about.
Okay. Anyone else wish to speak to the motion? Councillor Trenery.
I think if you have a look at the three motions that we've just looked at and you had a look at the photos side by side, it's hard to say why this one wouldn't be going through. It's tremendous to find out there's a heap of olive experts at this table. I'm thinking of planting a few, but I don't know whether there's any certificates to go with that information, or was there any real evidence to back any of that up. He's probably put in a plan because he's been asked to. I think if the other two had to put in a plan, I think they'd come with olives or some weird and wonderful thing as well. So when it comes down to common sense, this is not going to be turned into farmland full stop. Okay, it's going to sit with a shed on it, doing very little. Next door to it's going to have a family on it that'll utilise that area. This will not. It could have a family in it to participate in the community, but because for whatever reason we've decided this is different to the other two, which I really can't see, we've decided to knock it back. So I certainly don't agree with the recommendation.
All right. Yes, Councillor Shepherd.
The other two were abutting residential zones on the in Rutherglen, whereas this one is at Lake Mudamere, quite away from any residential zoning, and it's farming land, so it's quite different.
Okay. Councillor Murdoch.
Yeah, I have to agree with Councillor Shepherd. If you have a look at it, it is right in the middle of farming land, and you know, one of our aims has been to preserve as much farming land as we can. You know, it's just because it is a small block doesn't mean to say that it can't either be bought by somebody and used in a farming operation or with other farming operations they've got. It is an area that goes down to a camping ground as well. And so I think that building a house on there is taking away from the not only the look of the farming land, but putting the nail in the coffin of taking away the farming land full stop.
And Councillor Price, did you wish to speak?
I'd just like to read some words from the basis for the recommendation that the application follows a previous permit application made in 2015, which council refused. And it's acknowledged that in this application there is some commentary on developing the site with an olive plantation. However, the nexus between that and the need to have a dwelling on the subject land to attend to a largely passive, very small agricultural activity has not been well established, and it is believed does not provide sufficient justification for the land to be used as a dwelling. So I think that appropriately sums it up.
All right, thank you. Councillor Goldsworthy, did you want to sum up? All right, thank you. I'm going to put the motion that council resolves to refuse planning permit application 170240 as I read before. All those in favour? All those against? Carried. All those in favour?
Division.
All those in favour? Councillor Murdoch, Councillor Price, Councillor O'Connor, Councillor Goldsworthy, Councillor Shepherd. All those against? Councillor Trenery and Councillor Gaffney. Thank you. Item 11.5 is the Kew Springs Water Extraction Monthly Extraction Report, which I've just got to find in here among all the paperwork. Thank you very much. The recommendation is that Council note, this is the item that the CEO raised earlier and we agreed to have it put into the meeting. The recommendation is that Council notes the Kew Springs Water Extraction Facility Monitoring Report content and the action undertaken where required. Do I have someone to move that? Councillor Gaffney, seconder. Councillor Shepherd. Do you wish to speak to the motion? Yes?
I'd just like to say that the trucks that normally travel along the Beechworth-Wodonga Road, because of those roadworks, they've been travelling along the Beechworth-Chiltern Road, and I've certainly been confronted with them along that very narrow, winding stretch of road, and there's a fall. I'd hate to think how far, and I just think and the number of people who have commented on how dangerous that is.
Thank you. The seconder was Councillor Shepherd. Do you want to comment?
I'd just like to apologise that it was left out because it doesn't mean that we don't think it's important. We do think it's important, and even though the same thing's sort of said each meeting, really, it just keeps it in the forefront of our thinking, and we appreciate the work that's being done and yep.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak to this? All right, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Carried. Thank you. So item 12s are from Infrastructure Services, and item 12.1 is the Beechworth former railway station expression of interest. Yep. Just hang on, let me find it first. Yes, go ahead.
So if you're happy, the motion as it stands is that Council offer a 1-year lease with 2 one-year extension options to the Beechworth Food Co-op as the head tenant for use of the former Beechworth Railway Station building. I would like to add in at the end of that sentence for a rental amount of $120 per week plus outgoings for the first year, and with this amount to be reviewed annually. And then the rest of the motion as it stands with items 2, 3, 4 and 5.
All right, thank you. So I will put the recommendation that Council offers the 1-year lease with a 2-year extension to Beechworth Food Co-op as the head tenant for use of the former Beechworth Railway Station, with the addition, as Councillor Goldsworthy has stated. Secondly, notes that the Indigo U3A Incorporated is as an existing user and also as a respondent to the EOI process has been accommodated into the proposed new arrangement. Thirdly, notes that as head tenant, the Food Co-op will administer bookings for the activity and community meeting rooms. Fourthly, notes that the building is on Crown land and that the lease will require Crown consent. And fifthly, authorises the Chief Executive Officer to execute the lease documents. Do I have someone to move that? Councillor Goldsworthy, seconder. Councillor Trenery. Do you wish to speak to the motion?
Sure. Come on, Mike, I'll talk to it. Look, they are a community group. They're doing some great things, and I think we should support them, but I think they also need to pay their own way in part. And I don't believe this is a direct competition to our IGA, and I think it will activate that space to have a tenant in there. And I think it'll really bring that site along, and it bodes well for the future for that site.
Councillor Trenery, do you wish to speak?
Just probably a comment on the process. The process was fairly in-depth to get the right people in there, and I'd just like to congratulate Director of Infrastructure Services and the way he negotiated. U3A is a very important organisation, volunteers and does a lot of good work in the community, so probably not 100% of exactly what they wanted, but to negotiate that was a fantastic job. Thank you.
Anyone else wish to speak to the motion? Councillor Gaffney.
I've just got a question first of all, how does the...
Who are you asking, councillor?
I'm asking the mover, or the second I might like to. How does the Beechworth Food Share operate?
So from my understanding, they have a number of providers, up to 20 local providers that they support, and they operate for what I believe is about 16 hours per week. And there's a lot of volunteers that help out, and people join the food co-op and they get a discount on their goods if they're a member, and if they're not, they pay a slightly higher price, but it's a really good service that they offer.
That's right, thank you. The average rent for a shop in Beechworth is about $400 to $450 a week. We've got the Goldfields fruit and veg shop. I don't know whether they rent the shop or own it. They certainly pay rates. This co-op had a turnover last year of $132,000. When I saw food co-op, I thought that they would deal in food and what they sold you could eat, but I noticed one of the top selling products is toilet paper, which is, I thought, strange for a food co-op. It's a not-for-profit organisation, which reads in this report, but the P&L shows a profit of $500 for last year. The Indigo Youth Group used to have its premises at the railway station, but I believe it's now moved or is about to move to the old jail. I was just wondering whether we would have to pay rent at the old jail.
Does anyone able to answer that question, or can we take it on notice? Take it on notice? Thank you, CEO. So the question is, will the council have to pay the rent for the youth group at the old jail?
Yes.
Okay, so that's taken on notice. I'm getting a shake of the head there from Director of Planning and Community Services.
Sorry, the shake of the head is relating to I'm unaware that the youth centre is moving to the jail.
Oh, okay, thank you. So clarification on that whole issue, thank you.
Are they still at the station, the railway station?
Council resolved at a previous meeting that the railway station wouldn't be used as a youth centre, and that youth activities will be undertaken in a different way that didn't need a youth centre position. Okay,
thank you. And the CEO just wants to comment on one of your questions. Yes?
So, through you, Madam Chair. Councillor Gaff, you made a comment about not-for-profit and then noting that they made a profit. I just want to clarify that the terminology not-for-profit doesn't mean you can't make a profit. It means that the organisation doesn't earn a profit and distribute those profits to private investors. They are retained within the organisation itself as a general comment. Yeah.
Thank you.
I'm not...
Councillor.
Thanks. I'm not 100% against this, but I think it's unfair to the Goldfields fruit and veg shop in Beechworth, who sell probably exactly the same products, and they also sell things that are grown in Beechworth, Stanley and the surrounds.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else wish to speak to the motion? Councillor Shepherd.
I agree with you. That was a concern of mine, but I'm also aware that they're just moving. They're already established. They're moving to a better spot. So I'm not sure, like it's already happened, the competition between those two businesses. So I think that's already been addressed, unless they end up with a lot more members by being in that space. But at the moment, look, it's been going for quite a few years now. So that's already, if anything would have happened, it already was happened to the Goldfields.
Okay. Anyone else wish to speak to the motion? Councillor Price.
I would agree with some of Councillor Shepherd's response that both the business and this organisation have been in operation, and I think that they will continue to do that, and I think that we would be doing greater harm to not provide them a suitable space within the town to operate.
All right. Anyone else wish to speak to the motion? Okay. Do you wish to sum up, Councillor Goldsworthy? All right. I'll put the motion as read All those in favour? Against? Thank you, Councillor. So all those in favour? Councillor Trenery, Councillor Shepherd, Councillor Goldsworthy, Councillor Price, Councillor Murdoch, Councillor O'Connor. Against? Councillor Gaffney. Thank you. Item 12.2 is the Beechworth RSL lease. So the motion is that Council confirms its intention to enter into a lease with the RSL Victorian branch on behalf of the Beechworth RSL sub-branch for a period of up to 20 years, which is a 10-year initial period plus 2 5-year extension options for its current club rooms at Ford Street, Beechworth for an amount of $1 per year. Council notes that the proposed lease will be for an area which includes the RSL's current club rooms as well as an adjacent room, the long room, that has previously been used as part of the council offices. Officers place a public notice of the proposed lease and seek submissions from the public in accordance with section 190 and 223 of the Local Government Act. And should no objections be received by the nominated deadline, in response to the public submission process, the lease be granted, signed and sealed by the CEO. Should any objections be received, a further report would be brought to Council for it to consider the submissions and to make a decision in relation to the proposed lease. Do I have someone to move that recommendation? Councillor Trenery. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Murdoch. Do you wish to speak to the motion?
Yes, please, Madam Mayor. I was lucky enough to be Mayor when this first came up and had a lot of discussions with RSL. And the RSL does a lot of good things in our community and represents a lot of good things in the community, not just Anzac Day and a few things that represent our history. But they also do a lot of good things in our community for return servicemen, current return servicemen, including mental health issues and helping them through mental health. And part of their program was to get another space to have private conversations in regards to this and use those facilities and also use the people that are available to them, but they can only do that with a separate room. So this will provide that separate room for them. And I understand Council had to do a few things before it could vacate and get out and let them in. But I think the Council staff and Council are making a very good decision if it goes through to let the RSL use the long room.
Okay, thank you. And the seconder was Councillor Murdoch. Do you wish to speak to it? Reserve your right. Councillor Goldsworthy.
The RSL in Beechworth is a very strong organisation. I spoke to their president tonight. They have about 112 members. They'll make full use of this facility. If you've ever been inside there, they do a great job in there, but they need more space. I think it's incumbent on us to support them, particularly given that the RSL in its prior form was the owner of that entire piece of land and facility. It's only fair that we support them in the next 20 years of the lease.
Okay. Any other councillors wish to speak to the motion? Okay, well, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Carried. Thank you. Item 12.3 is the contract for supply of mobile maintenance services on Council's plant, equipment and fleet. There's a recommendation that Council accepts a tender from Michael Hewitt to supply... Yes, Councillor? Yeah, you need your microphone on. Yeah.
I move a motion that we defer this item for 1 month for it to come back to the March meeting of Council so that we can be briefed on the cost implications of doing an in-house service rather than having it going to contractors.
Okay, so the motion now is that we defer item 12.3, for 1 month to the next council meeting.
Yes.
To consider the in-house options.
I'm happy for it to end there.
Okay, deferment for 1 month. Do I have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Price. Anyone wish to speak to the deferment motion? All right, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Carried. Thank you. And then There's nothing from executive management and no notices of motion. Councillor reports. Do any councillors wish to use this time just to update the community on any issues that they would like to bring? Yes, Councillor.
It's not really an issue, but usually at the end of the year, usually at the end of the year, all councillors do go round to the Christmas celebrations or breakups, and meet the community, and often give a presentation on the. And for this one, it was for the Barnawatha Primary School, which most schools have presentation nights, as I said, that we have to go to. I actually enjoy them, being an ex-teacher. They're fantastic. And this is a certificate of appreciation to the council for the donation that they make to each school at the end of the year. And Barnawatha Primary School wanted the council to have their yearbook. Oh. It's interesting reading for you. Thank you. But it is one of those things that it's the really enjoyable part of council, when you go around and you meet people and see young children who are going to great schools and are hopefully growing up to be our next citizens and maybe our next councillors.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other councillors like to take this opportunity just to feed back to the community? Councillor Price.
I've already fed this back to the staff, but I think it's important to put it on the record that we opened the Early Years Children's Hub in Chiltern, and I think as much as we scrutinise the organisation, we also need to pay compliment where it's due, and that occasion was one of those moments that the building looked amazing. It was complementary to its existing use. It still looked the way that we wanted it to look on the outside, but it was fit for purpose on the inside. And interestingly, in the week leading up to that opening, I'd had a conversation with the hardware store owner in Rutherglen, who wanted to let us know that the builder that we'd employed had purchased all of his materials locally through Rutherglen. So I think that it was well received in the Chiltern community. The builder worked really well. It came in on time, and it's a much needed service for the town. So I'd just like to thank again all of the staff that were involved in that, and say that Chiltern really appreciates it.
Thank you. Anyone else like to raise any issues for the community? Okay. My diary's there if anyone's got any questions for me. Otherwise, self-explanatory. Are there any items for general business? Yes, Councillor Goldsworthy.
I'm just looking at the water use and water mining in the Indigo Shire. I'm just looking for a report potentially about what we do in the future about that, and in relation to the ongoing reporting on Kew Springs, if we could have a discussion around that at some point in the future as to whether we need to report it every meeting or whether it should be by exception when there's something going on.
So you're requesting a report regarding water extraction in the Shire and the ongoing...
Our response to it.
Yep. All right, so has that been taken, noted, Councillor? Not Councillor, sorry. Directors? Yes. Good, thank you. And then our next meeting is Tuesday the 27th of March. So I would just like to thank the members of the gallery that are still here, and thank you all for coming tonight. And I'm going to declare the meeting closed. Thank you.